I am joined by Shirley Chalk. Shirley graduated with her bachelor's in economics from the University of Chicago and enjoyed a 20-year career in finance and administration. During this time, she also began training under Grandmaster Iping Chang, and in 2006 became the U.S. Women's Tai Chi National Champion. Over the course of her career, Shirley realized her Tai Chi training was instrumental in helping her manage workplace stress, conflicts, as well as associates. She is speaking today in the capacity of one who trains women around stress and conflict management. She is a certified corporate wellness specialist. Welcome, Shirley.
Thank you so much, Angelina. So happy to be here in your program.
The reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is not only because we have talked about difficult topics in the past year, but also because I think it's important for women, but not just women, but I will say specifically women, to know how to survive and thrive, but also to bring up some of this, and it might be uncomfortable for some viewers or listeners because it's not readily talked about. And if someone is blindsided, it can impact their legacy. How might you describe the gray areas regarding some challenges that women have faced in the corporate world, no matter their level within that corporate structure, whether they're at the top management or they're entry level?
I like to find the gray areas as the uncharted paths that other women have not charted for the women behind them. There are many women who have succeeded wonderfully in the corporate world, but on very particular paths. So if you follow those paths that have already been charted, are well worn, then there are no gray areas because it's very clearly defined how to succeed. You want to go and succeed on a different path. That's where the gray areas are. And when I think about going off the well-worn path, when you're out in nature, you're the first to go through a wilderness. And for me, that's the gray area. Whenever you are the first, you're going to get bloodied and scratched as you make that path
forward. Absolutely. And I just want to make a reference to a moment that a part of being that first or one of the first or a pioneer within the corporate arena can be changing people's beliefs, whether it's beliefs that they realize or ingrained beliefs that might be so subconscious or unconscious that they don't even realize that they might have a bias against a woman in a leadership position, or they might want to box her in. When somebody has to change somebody else's belief system, that can be like digging a new 6-foot trench through the Arctic regarding what that woman might have to go through, because other people can say, well, that's not the norm, and that can make them very uncomfortable.
It is not unique. It happens all the time, and it is about culture. And I think that it's worth talking about, what does culture mean? Culture is kind of like the habits of your environment. It's what people do because that's what everybody else does. And a culture is what people just naturally assume should happen because it's what always happens. So when you disrupt what normally happens, then you're going up against a big tidal wave. You do what has been done because that's what you know to do.
And it's worked in the past.
Because it worked in the past, because no one has really given you an easy way of doing something different, and nobody wants to be that first person. Things have to get done, and you're going to do it the easiest way you can. And the easiest way is how you know how to do it, and how what you do fits with how everybody else does it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so hard to change corporate culture, because there's so many pieces. And if one of these pieces, somebody wants to do something else, the other pieces don't have an easy way to fit in. And if you try to redesign it from the top down, it's not organic, like it's
Mhm.
not easy. That's where it has to filter in from how the people that are there doing the work. That the culture has to change from many from within, and it takes time. But culture is malleable, just like habits are malleable. Culture is not something that you can forcibly change, just like habits aren't something that you can forcibly change with one concerted effort one time. If you want to change your own habits, it's remembering to do it every single day until it becomes the thing that you do without having to think about. And that's true for culture as well. It can't happen from the top down, and it can't be changed by one person trying to change the culture.
Okay.
So I think that that is where women wind up becoming very disillusioned and very discouraged when they find themselves in a corporate culture that's not used to having women around. And I think that there's a lot of pressure put on our young women, and that is pressure that they put on themselves. It's also pressure that their parents put on them and pressure that society puts on them. I think this is especially true for American women. American girls are told their whole lives that they are going to change the world. So I have a uniquely Eastern and Western perspective. I spent part of my youth growing up in Asia, but the rest of it growing up in the United States, where I spent all of my summers over in Asia. So Western mindset, I was told that I can do whatever I put my mind to. Women can do everything that boys can do. Women are going to change the world. And then you go to college and you're told that you are the future leaders of this world. You can do anything.
Right.
And then you graduate from college with these expectations of everything that you are going to be able to do to change the world. And then you face reality. I just want to kind of start off the conversation for women to realize how unfair an expectation it is that they have put on themselves before they have even faced the realities of the world. Because the world really is a jungle. It really is. And American children are taught about this concept of fairness. Um, and this is very uniquely American, I feel like, because over in Asia, no one talks about things being fair or unfair. The
Right. That's
world
Hollywood. Thank you, Hollywood and
is.
John Wayne. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. John Wayne's going to show up on his horse and it's all going to be wrapped up at the end of 2 hours. Keep going.
Yeah, over in Asia, the world is what it is, and a lot of the world is unfair. And that is the reality of life. In the United States, we hold a very high degree to this concept of things being fair
Mhm.
when we teach our children. For women, especially, facing the realities of life where things really are not fair. It's a bigger hurdle for them to pass, greater disappointments where they have the expectation that they should be able to
Be
have
treated equally.
be treated equally,
Mhm.
have things be fair, have people around you look out for you, that things are fair, and that you should be able to do everything you want to do. I graduated college in 1996, and I graduated, as you mentioned, my degree was in economics at the University of Chicago. not that many women. I decided to go into the finance sector where it is still, quite male dominated. I did experience a lot of what many young women still experience, coming up in the corporate world. There were jobs that there were a lot of women who they were very successful. I chose to go a different path and I had to navigate that. So I did have to go and enter the gray areas and figure it out. As women, we need to get a sense of like, what is the landscape of the environment? It's so difficult for you to have to keep trying to prove yourself over and over again, which I think a lot of women are trying to do because they're trying to prove to themselves, to everybody around them, that I can do this job. I'm good enough to do this job. I deserve the respect of the people around me. And when you don't get that in the outset, then it can be just really deflating and cause you to become defensive and then feel like I have to prove myself. I have to prove myself harder. I have to prove myself harder with each time that you don't. And I think that it's really important for women to stop trying to prove themselves because that's not going to earn you the respect. What's going to earn you the respect is for people to start accepting that you are part of the culture, that you are there and belong there because you have made yourself ingrained in that culture.
And I think one of the things you're referring to is that when a woman feels like she has to prove herself and prove herself and prove herself, she's just going to burn herself out.
She's going to burn herself out and she's going to lose the sense of what makes the group gel, because then it just winds up being about you yourself and how you can show that you are worth it. And when you're in a group environment, it can't be about yourself anymore. It has to be about how you fit into that culture. Whether it's a culture that you want to be in or
Mm.
not, that's the other conversation about the toxic culture, because I think a lot of women feel like they can thrive in a toxic environment
They can
and they
handle it.
can't, right? And why would you want to do that to yourself? That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of women, they are trying so hard to prove their worth in that environment that they wind up actually becoming the thing that makes them um, separate and outside the group. So then they've removed themselves from the thing that they should be trying to bring themselves into the culture. That's how you get accepted.
For a lady employee that's had her world crushed, how might you advise her on rebuilding her life and career so she can have a chance to define, develop, and execute her legacy outside of a toxic experience?
I think that women need to know that it is not because of them that they weren't able to thrive in a particular environment. So if you are trying to plant a rose in the deserts, you can't expect that rose to grow and thrive and bloom. It really does affect how much you thrive in the environment that you're in. So if you are in a toxic environment, it will take so much effort to thrive. I'm not saying that it's not possible to thrive, because you do have, these, you hear about these plants that do seem to bloom in environments that are so, not their natural environments, and it happens, but it's rare, and it takes a lot of effort. And if you focus on being in an environment that you can thrive in, you will thrive. But I think the most important thing for women coming out of any kind of traumatic experience, and this is true for anyone, not just women coming out of a traumatic, toxic work culture environment, but anyone coming out of a traumatic environment, is to not keep reliving that
Mm.
trauma.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, that I think a part of it is, if an outside party sees you one way, it doesn't mean that you have to buy in and see yourself that way. So I think a part of it is letting go of believing that you're a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe
Right.
in that moment of time, and that moment of time may have been an hour, a week, a year, 10 years, whatever it is. Maybe in that moment of time you're a victim, but now if it's a year later, an hour later, a decade later, um, you don't have to carry that identity.
I totally believe that 100%. I do believe that, victims of trauma need to heal before they move on. And I think a lot of trauma victims don't allow themselves that time to heal. They think that they are moving on when they're not. If you keep revisiting that trauma, then you haven't healed. You're not actually ready to move on yet. And I think a lot of women, they feel like they need to just move forward. You can't fully move forward until you digest what happened,
Honestly,
process
honestly.
honestly,
Yeah.
digest and process what happened. You have to honestly revisit and acknowledge how it hurt you. If you need a professional help to do that, you should do that, so that you can be honest with it and then move on. And then
So
when you move on, then, move on with that new perspective that, this was the past.
would you provide maybe one healing tip?
Healing is so hard because you have to be honest. So you use the word, honesty, and it is key. I think a lot of people are afraid to really be honest about what happened in their lives, to really look deep into themselves, to be honest with themselves. We are so good at making up um, just constructs in our mind to protect ourselves, right? And we can rationalize anything, and
Mm,
we can rationalize excuses, we can rationalize scenarios, but until you can break through all of those rationalizations and constructs that your brain has formed to protect yourself, I
yeah.
don't think you can truly heal. Like, I think that the only way to really heal, and this is not just healing, but this is growing to meet your full potential. You have to first break down all of the barriers. And I think women put up so many more barriers than men do. And this is from my own personal experience too. It's just all these barriers that you put up so that you don't wind up feeling hurt,
Mm,
so that you don't feel you are weak,
mm,
that want to feel strong.
Right.
You don't want to feel like you are the weaker sex. So all of these barriers that we put up to protect ourselves, those are barriers that prevent us from being hurt. They're also barriers that prevent us from growing. We have to be honest with other people. We more importantly have to be honest with ourselves. So this is where, my perspective is from a uniquely physical perspective. I didn't talk about like what is it that I do? Like why do I have this unique perspective? What is Tai Chi? Tai Chi is a martial art. You might think of Tai Chi as this slow moving, choreographed set of exercises,
Yeah.
but as the martial art, it is two people connecting to each other, and you're trying to direct and redirect each other's force and energy and momentum. Where if you are resisting and pushing and really fighting back, and trying to use your own body's physical strength, that's actually the way for you to get knocked down the fastest. So it's
Mm.
how do you stay on your feet when somebody like me, right? I am not a big muscular person. So how do I engage in this practice with somebody who is much bigger and much stronger physically than me?
Hmm.
It can't be from my physical strength. I can try to make my muscles big and strong, but there's a limit to how big my muscles can be. My maximum is still going to be so much less than the maximum of what a man can build up. So if I try to develop that kind of strength, to make myself physically stronger in a way a man will be physically stronger, I
Hmm.
will still always just be here.
Yeah.
So I can't develop that kind of strength. I have to um, acknowledge that that is not the strength that I need to develop. I need to be honest with what is my strength.
And I just wanted to say, I think some women might know their strengths, and I think some might not, unless they've
Because
had coaching or a mentor or somebody that can look directly at them and say, here is what I see, and to offer them some feedback.
right. And I think that that is so true where a lot of women, because, they don't know. So they will only see what they're exposed to. They're told about what is strong and what, they should be striving for to succeed. And they're all trying to and go down that path that may not follow their strengths.
Yeah. And so if a woman can't be a brick wall, would you speak to the strength of water for a moment? And then I'm going to move on to the next question.
Yeah, so like I don't know if you can see, I have the elements in my back. This is where I do my online programming, and the Chinese elements. You have wood, water, metal, fire, and earth. And water is the one that I connect with the most because, when you think of Tai Chi, you think of water. And the water, it is the softest substance where you can't even hold on to it, right? You go and you try to hold water and it just goes right through your hands. You can't hold on to it. But when the water all comes together in one force, I mean, the power of that will break through the brick walls. It will take down metal. Like you see the power and the destruction that a tsunami can make. So it's this idea of being fluid. When you push someone, what is it that's getting pushed? You're finding something to push against. So, if you resist, and you're not as physically strong as the person pushing you, you
Mhm.
actually give them power.
Because they're
You
directing you that moment.
because they find something to push against. So
Yeah.
what if you don't give them anything to push against? They try to push you, but they can't find that point to push. They push you, and it's like pushing water, right?
Mhm.
So that is the power of Tai Chi. And I have used this in my experiences with conflict. So I think that this is probably the one thing that had made me the most, or the thing that helped me the most as I navigated my corporate career. So as I advanced in leadership positions, it's not like people didn't try to push me down.
Or
That's
test
that's
you.
the corporate world, right? People are trying to get ahead, and people have egos, and people are trying to advance their
Vision, agenda. Yeah.
exactly. How do you navigate around that and still be able to advance with what your vision and agenda is? Being honest with your strengths and weaknesses and your needs in the environment. Like if you think of yourself as a plant, what is the environment that will more naturally allow that plant to flourish? If you plant yourself in that environment, then it will be easier for you to be able to succeed. That's if you want it to be easy. Some women do want to be pioneers, right?
Okay.
They are willing to um, take those scratches and be the first. And, then that's okay too. That's
Mhm.
admirable. But then you need to even more acutely understand the environment that you're in so that you can thrive, so that you're not stomped, right? So then it takes even more understanding and nuance to be able to thrive. It takes more care. And I think that like that's where a lot of women, they feel like just willing it to happen will make
Mm.
it happen. Like if
Oh.
I want it enough,
Yeah.
then it will happen. And that is not reality. Like you
Is an illusion of
have
wishful thinking.
it's
Yeah.
an illusion of wishful thinking. So I think people, and that's part of the honesty, as well, is you need to know the environment that you're in and how you can actually thrive. It may not be fair, it may not be right, but if that's the environment you have chosen and you have chosen to be the pioneer, then that's the environment that you're going to face, and it will be a jungle,
Yeah.
because life is a jungle. People don't like their boats rocked. People want stability. People in power, and whoever that power is, wants stability. So in this environment, male dominated, sexist environment,
And
when
they seem to be
men,
writing the script. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go
they're
ahead.
writing the script. If you're the one in charge, you get to write the script. When you feel that you're losing control over that, then you need to put order back, right? Everybody wants order.
Mhm.
Nobody wants a sense of disorder in a corporate environment. So, that, and who gets to make that order? The person in charge. And if everyone in charge looks exactly the same and thinks exactly the same, that's the environment that's going to be. So that's why
Mhm.
diversity in leadership
Makes a
is
difference.
so important. And diversity means diversity in thought,
Mhm.
diversity in background, diversity in perspective, diversity in life experience. Then you can, as an organization, better handle these situations.
And final question, what would you like your life's legacy to be?
That's really hard because, I don't know yet. I don't want to write my story yet until it's at the end. But where my life goes, I want it to be done with mindfulness, with honesty, and embracing the unknown. Life is just full of unknown. You don't
Yes.
know until you try. I might fail miserably. Like I might like completely fall on my face. But then that's a learning moment for me. I might try it again,
Yes.
right? Try it a little differently. I might not try it at all, but I'm not going to not try because I'm afraid I'm going to fall.
Right.
Because the only way, and this is also now like the Tai Chi training, is like my experience is I get pushed around and I am either going to stay on my feet or my butt is going to land on the ground.
Yes.
And the only way I can learn how to stay on my feet is to figure out how to not have my butt land on the ground,
Yes.
which
Dancing in the moment.
requires
Yes.
many, many times of my butt landing on the ground until I figure out how I can stay on my feet. Like it's not
Yeah.
something I can theorize. I can't say, this is how I'm going to stay on my feet. Most likely, that's not the reality. I have to figure it out by actually getting pushed, and I can stay on my feet.
An application. Yes.
Application. So that's
Yeah.
like my whole life is through application. And yeah, so that's what I think of like leaving my legacy.
Good, good. Thank you so much, Shirley, for tackling some of these difficult subjects that I know are not always comfortable to talk about. I know we've had these conversations in private, but it's another thing to bring it to a public forum to invite the any outside listener or viewer in, but it also gives them a chance to reflect on alternative narratives outside of just what maybe the media talks about. And I just also wanted to acknowledge that you are living your legacy right now, kind of like the metaphor of the water that you brought up. And you've been, one foot in the corporate world, just as you've got one foot now in the world of, being an entrepreneur. And so I hope that your positive example can resonate with anyone out there that, is searching. And I think that, as we've talked about, there are many individuals right now who are of Generation Z and Y that are looking for examples outside of what might just be readily available. And so I just wanted to say thank you for
Oh,
your
thank you so
your
much. I think
input.
thank you so much for letting me share my thoughts, and it is like a slightly different perspective, I think, than what is generally told to women. And I guess I'll just end with something that I really believe strongly in is I don't think it does women justice to feed them a false sense of empowerment. Um, because I don't think that it helps them to be able to really do what needs to be done to succeed. Where, just because you believe that things should be a certain way, and you feel empowered to make that happen, doesn't mean that that's going to happen. More
Yeah.
likely than not, you're going to come up against a wall. So if you can set your own ego aside, no longer feel like you have anything to prove, right? So think about like the success that you want. Is it the success of doing it that you want? Or is it the acknowledgement that you did it that you want? They're two different things. If you want the acknowledgement that you did it, that might actually get in the way of you being able to do it. Because, I can help you navigate if you want to be that water finding the cracks, and like get, to where you want to go. A lot of it may actually be things that you won't get recognized for, that you don't want to um, maybe put yourself so visibly out that you're doing it, because it's easier to fly under the radar until you end up there. And then all of a sudden, hey, how did that rose bloom in the desert? I don't remember it getting planted there, but hey, here it is and it's thriving. Be that, instead of being the one who, is the first to plant that rose in the desert.